Hey, party people, welcome to this week's Money News in Human Words. And look, before we get into it for this week, I'm super pumped to announce that my second book baby has just gone live. The final piece of the puzzle was the cover, which actually took a fair bit of doing, but we got there in the end. It's now currently set up for pre-sale ahead of the launch that is scheduled for in March. And I'd love your help to make that launch amazing. Basically, the more support we get for the book ahead of the pre-sale, ahead of the actual launch date in March, the more stores it's going to get in there. And yeah, I'd love to obviously see that in as many as possible. So if you want to, get a copy for yourself, a friend, a workmate, or even if you want to buy a copy for me, I would love to have that happen. You can check out all the details at pivotwealth.com.au/RSI, as in RSI for Replace Your Salary by Investing. All the details are on there, and you can grab a copy through there as well. The first piece I want to unpack for this week is actually a story from someone we've been working with just over the last little bit around setting up to buy their dream home and driving some tax efficiencies at the same time. Basically, through the work that we did together, we realized that they were actually leaving over $40,000 a year of money on the table, including paying $19,000 a year more in tax than what they actually needed to. So essentially the situation, they came to us really frustrated by the uncertainty around a home purchase. They knew that rent, or heard that rent vesting was the go, but really wanted to buy their own dream home. They were saving well, but they felt that they weren't really getting ahead at the rate that they wanted to. Basically, these guys, 37 and 39, their income's 100,000 and 220,000, saving $6,000 a month, asset position $560,000. They had cash savings of 380 grand and super of 160K. Basically, they were saving money for their dream home purchase, which they'd planned at 1.3 mil. But what happened as we went through the financial decision-making process, they realized that that buying the property at the level that they had planned, around that $1.3 million mark, would have meant that they basically couldn't really borrow much more money. And instead of going that way, what they chose to do was to purchase a home at around $1 million, so that they could then borrow and buy an investment property at $1.2 million. At the same time, they used catch-up super contributions of 40 grand for the higher income partner to take advantage of the tax deductions that you can get from making those super contributions, but doing that before the high income super tax kicked in, which happens at $250,000. And given she was on 220 grand, it meant that there wasn't too much room to actually do that. There was also, and we did another 70K in extra super contributions for the lower income partner that he funded with his regular savings, with a plan to rebuild their cash after the property purchase and then look to implement a debt recycling strategy. Essentially, where the upside came from in this one is that they ended up, instead of buying a $1.3 million home, and essentially that's all, they ended up getting an extra $900,000 of property because they purchased 1 million plus 1.2. So they end up with a total of $2.2 million of property. At that extra $900,000 of property level, essentially the upside from that is $43,000 a year. At the same time, they save tax on their super contributions, $12,800 a year. And so that essentially gets to a net upside after advice fees of $41,500 in year one, increasing to $1.65 million after year 20. Now, again, subtle plug for my upcoming book, that these tactics and how we got there are unpacked in full detail in my book, Replace Your Salary by Investing. Again, check it out, www.pivotwealth.com.au/RSI. Into the news for this week, I was looking at the best and worst performing ETFs in Australia through 2022. The stats have just been released on this one. And it made for some pretty interesting reading. Essentially, the worst performing ETFs, topping the list is the BetaShares Crypto Innovators ETF. That's down 82% for the year, after the year that crypto has had Probably no massive surprises there, but clearly that's copped a huge battering. There's also the Global X Ultra Long NASDAQ 100 hedge fund that comes in second at negative 70% for the year. So basically that fund gets the invest in the NASDAQ, which has been totally smashed, but they do it with borrowing. So the upside is amplified and the downside is also amplified. Then we've got Montaka Global Extension Fund, Beta Shares Geared US Equity Fund, Hyperion Global Growth Companies Fund. They're all down in the 40% sort of range. Perpetual Global Innovation Fund, Global Robotics and Artificial Intelligence ETF. That's another Beta Shares one. Montaka Global Long Only Equities Fund, Global X FANG and ETF, and the Global X Hydrogen ETF. They're the number 10 on that list is down 36%. So basically the rest of them have lost more than 36%. A lot of technology, a lot of US shares in there. And on the flip side, the best performing fund over 2022 was the Global X Ultra Short NASDAQ 100 hedge fund. So basically where you're betting on shorting the market. Pretty dangerous game buying a fund that's betting on the market going down. But obviously with the market having gone down over the last little bit, that fund is up 81% over the last year, followed by the Beta Shares US Strong Bear Hedge Fund. That's another fund that bets on the market going down, up 44%. Beta Shares Global Energy ETF, so getting into the actual good performing funds. We're seeing resources do really well, so that Beta Shares fund is up 40%. There's another Beta Shares Australian Resources ETF that's up almost 30%. The ASX 200 Resources Fund up 30%. VanEck Resources up 22%. Beta Shares Oil Index, that's a synthetic fund, up 18%. S&P ASX Infrastructure Index up 18%. Physical Platinum up 16%. And Beta Shares Strong US Dollar Fund up 15%. A fund that bets basically on the US dollar AUD exchange. So it's interesting looking at these funds and what's performed well and what's not well performed, worse, that they're basically the mirror image of the best performing funds from the previous year. Because in the last year, tech went really well, crypto went really well, that all of these funds were kicking butt. And their tables have completely turned. Resources have come, sort of running a slow race and ended up pumping it. So it goes to show the importance of having diversified investment and the fact that you're never going to consistently pick the winners over time. I spoke to a lot of people that thought that tech was the future, and obviously tech is the future, but it doesn't mean that in every single year the shares are going to perform awesomely. So something to keep in mind as you're building out your portfolio for the year ahead. Talking of building your portfolio for the year ahead, the other piece I was looking at last week is the massive market rally that we've been seeing through January and the fact that Bitcoin is back on the rise. Basically, last week, tech rallied really hard. NASDAQ up 2.7% at the back end of the week. The ASX is set to potentially reach an all-time high this week after a 5.9% rally in January, which has been completely opposed to the forecast that we were seeing at the back end of the year. In the US, we're seeing Netflix, Tesla, Google, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon. All of these companies are all up. Interestingly, we saw Amazon and Microsoft announced massive job cuts last week, over 10,000 roles being cut in those companies. But obviously the markets like what that means for the stock price and the stock price in the shorter term, because both companies are up really strongly. A big part of that, though, is the fact that they're talking about US interest rate increases slowing down, with many talking about potentially a rate rise of only 2.5% in February, which compared to the 0.75% supersized rate rises that we've seen over the last little bit is a big turnaround. And look, I suppose that's good news, but there is some commentary coming out saying that they're suggesting that rates will stay high through 2023 and not start dropping until 2024. Based on the success of the forecast over the last little bit, I suppose you do have to question that a little bit, but time will tell. And it's good to see that we are going to be seeing a bit of a slowdown in the rate rises so that we can, people can sort of catch their breath and do something to catch up with the cost of living and the rate rises that we've seen over the last little bit. Next piece is around 7 tips for first home buyers borrowing. I saw this in the AFR and I thought it was really, really great stuff for anyone looking to get into the property market, particularly given the fact that prices have cooled massively over the course of the last 6 or 7 months in particular. A lot of people that are now able to enter the market, wanting to pick up something that's much cheaper than what it was, this time 6 months ago. So basically, to put yourself in the strongest position possible for borrowing as a first home buyer, the first one is ask for a pay rise. Basically, having a bit of an awkward conversation and boosting your income could at the same time boost your borrowing capacity. And they gave the example of the fact that a 5% pay rise for someone earning $100,000 could increase borrowing capacity by about $35,000. For a couple earning $200,000, this could increase your borrowing capacity by around $70,000. So that makes a big difference. The next one is find a lower interest rate. Something that a lot of people don't realize is that banks look at your servicing ability and how much money they will lend you based on the interest rate that they're offering you. That means that if you can find another lender that's offering a cheaper rate, that your borrowing capacity will actually be higher because the rate that you've got is lower. So it's definitely worth shopping around. If you don't already have a good mortgage broker in your corner, definitely go and find one, because they will help you to do that. And mortgage broking is a free service. So, take advantage of that and put yourself in the best position possible for sure. Next one is spend less and save more. Basic, but the less you spend and the more you save, the bigger your deposit is going to be and the less that you're going to need to borrow. It also doing that goes into the next point, which is showing the lender how frugal you can be by reducing your discretionary spending on those more discretionary items, luxury goods, eating out, those sorts of things, because the banks do look at that. They look at your statements and they see what's there to see how much they'll lend you and what your servicing will look like. Next one is closing down credit cards. Credit cards eat into your borrowing capacity because the banks have to assume that you're going to max them out because you can. So that will put a big handbrake on how much you can borrow. Similarly, pay off your other debts and do this before you apply for a loan. Ditching those debts means that you're going to be able to use the money that you've got available as a credit limit in another debt facility to increase your borrowing capacity by essentially the same amount, or perhaps even a little bit more, depending on what the interest rate on that lending facility is. And the last one is avoiding lenders' mortgage insurance. Finding a guarantor, like using a family guarantee, equity loan, avoiding paying that lender's mortgage insurance will mean that you're going to have more money that you can use as a deposit on your property. And that means that you're going to have to borrow less overall, or that you can get a better property as well. All of these things, I think, are great things. You can use some of them. Ideally, use all of them. Put yourself in the strongest position possible and make property in 2023 an easier move for you. Guys, that's it from me for this week. I will catch you on the next one. Bye for now.